Hello and welcome to Nikon Report, your weekly roundup of all the latest Nikon news and all other photographic announcements that we found interesting. It's Konstantin here, and here is
Becky.
In the flesh this time.
That's right.
Honestly, I forgot how to do those podcasts together. You know, I was always relying on that 20 seconds delay. Well, I would finish my sentence and I would just wait.
Yeah, it's very different going through a screen to real life where we talk over each other in real time.
Exactly. Because normally I'd wait for 20 seconds and then you would say yes.
That's right.
And then I'm waiting for another 20 seconds thinking that you're going to say something else. And then
nothing would happen.
And sometimes Becky does the same. And I can't answer because her logic is on point.
Infallible.
Exactly. So let's get straight to the news. So obviously 2 weeks passed, not much happened. People feeding on rumors. And again, there's another drama happening on Z8. Tom Hogan came up with the idea that apparently Nikon is scheduled to release a camera on August the 24th.
Which will be when this podcast comes out.
Exactly. So as far as we're aware, we don't have any heads up.
No.
We normally do, just a little bit, like tiny bit. You know, like hush, hush.
At least 48 hours, but usually a little bit more. So I would be incredibly surprised if something came out on the 24th of August. I think it's more likely, if we are going to see anything, I think end of September. And I tell you for why.
All right, tell me.
Because in the past, we've had the heads up around this time for a launch in mid-September or 2 weeks from now. Now, obviously, the way that Nikon have done NDAs and told people about things has changed considerably with all the various different leaks that have gone on over the last couple of years. But I think if it's going to be something as big as a Z8, we would get some advance notice. We know nothing, truly.
We know nothing.
Exactly.
But, you know, as well, we talked about it between us, and I was thinking like, okay, well, are they going to release Z8 this year? Or a lot of people say it's not going to happen this year, and then they'll release Z6 and Z7. And then it makes me worry, because if they release Z6 and Z7 first, they're not going to have Z9 technology in there. And we're talking also focus speed, because then how do you release Z8?
Yeah.
It should be even better in terms of specifications. And that's the problem we have. And I assume that a lot of technology should trickle down from the top offering, the most expensive one, to slightly less expensive one, and then slightly less expensive one, and yada, yada, yada. So,
yes.
So effectively you're going from Z9 to Z8, Z7, and Z6, etc., etc. If you release Z6 and Z7 now with Z9 technology, then you really have to bump the specs of Z8 first, or you have to gimp your Z6 and Z7 cameras. And I'm worried about it because I don't want this to happen.
No, I don't think any of us do. Now, what Tom said was, here's my real problem with the rumor as it stands. Nikon does not need another 45 megapixel camera. Nikon instead needs a higher pixel count camera that's professional. A Pro 6180 100 megapixel Z8 without a grip would make much more sense alongside the Pro 45 megapixel Z9. And he goes on to say, and it doesn't seem to make sense to make more prosumer Z7 Mark III cameras as a 6180 or 100 megapixel sensor if a Z8 is 45 megapixels, if that's where they pitch it.
I mean, if you noticed, I'm just nodding approvingly because I've been saying this for years. And my mate Tom agrees with me.
He does. He also says, that said, Nikon does what Nikon wants to do. And that's not always easily predictable. We have certainly found that to be the case. Now, obviously, the problem with waiting so long and not having any information really leaked out there, nothing concrete, is that it reduces the amount of excitement around a new product when you wait too long.
Yeah, and it's also raising the bar. Because then your expectations go somehow higher. The longer you wait, the expectations become higher and higher.
For sure.
For no reason, but that's how we as a human beings are. And luckily, Z9 pushed all the envelopes. And in terms of this, we got the camera, which is groundbreaking in terms of technology. But now we're starting to think, oh my God, well, if Z8 is not this year, it has to be amazing. And I truly hope it will be.
Yes, I do too. Remember, before the Z9 specs came out, we were looking at the R3 specs and doing a kind of comparison. And actually, the Z9 over-delivered in a lot of ways. It was way better than we expected it to be. So I worry that if we compare what a quote-unquote Z8 is going to be with other things on the market, I just don't want us to be disappointed, as you said.
That's true. Under-promise and over-deliver. And in terms of this, by not having any rumors around, Nikon is definitely under-promising things. So hopefully the excitement is going to be on level, but also what I'm trying to tell the people who think that Z8 is going to be mini Z9 is try to think, if Z8 released, which is mini Z9, how many Z9s they're going to sell after, and how people who bought Z9 are going to think about their Z9 this way. So those are my points. I guess the time will show. What a lot of people say that, okay, if you're going to go for Z6 and Z7, Z6 is going to be 33 megapixels, and there's a Sony existing sensor that is apparently really good, and in terms of dynamic range is very similar to D800, so which is nice to have. The question is, okay, if you're not going to have Z9 performance in terms of autofocus, what are we going to have? And I think for a lot of people, Z6 Mark III should be a mini Z9 in a way. Maybe not as fast, not the 20 frames per second, but 33 megapixels and a reasonably fast frame rate. I'm talking about maybe 10, 12 frames.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, but if they bring out a Z6 III with 33 megapixels, and I agree that 24 megapixels should be upgraded. We have moved beyond the need for that. But will they keep the Z6 II for a time?
I don't see why not, because Z6 is still available for sale. So in terms of this, Nikon been really good at releasing new generation of cameras and keeping the last generation around.
Right.
So just to have those entry-level points. And in terms of this, Z6 II has been out for 2 years now.
Yes.
For a lot of people, they think, well, Z6 II is a really good camera. It is time for now, to introduce a new technology. So that's what we're going to have. Z7, however, is a different beast because, as Tom quite clearly points out, that Z8 has to be a pro camera. And again, we had this conversation about what pro and what is not pro, but there is a demand for a bigger body. That's just, it's there. So in terms of this, yeah, we're going to see, okay, is Z7 is going to stay the same camera, let's say, in for landscape photographer, small and light with a, that pixel punch with 45 megapixel sensor?
Yeah.
Or are we going to get slightly larger sensor? I don't know.
So with the Z6 series and the Z7 series of cameras, I think part of the issue is going to be always the price, right?
Yeah.
You've got the Z5 as your entry level to full frame, which
Yes.
we all forget about, but it exists. And I know a
Yes.
lot of our viewers have one.
And it's raising the question what Z5 is going to be, because effectively, I think Z5 effectively is Z6. If you see what I mean, because if you keep the two generation cameras around, I know there's a different sense. I mean, let's keep all that. But if you think about it, yeah, effectively, Z5 and Z6 are very close. A part of the sensor, everything else is pretty much the same. So in terms of this, what do? Maybe you keep Z5.
So you keep the Z5 to fill that 24 megapixel entry level or entry point to FX mirrorless. Then you have the Z6 III as your 33 megapixel.
Which is going to become a new standard in terms of the lowest resolution.
Right. Good for video, good for everything. Yeah. Then you have the Z7 III as your sort of landscape slightly, just for consumers that want, or prosumers that want slightly higher resolution.
High-res camera for basically non-action photography, which is small, so it's good for travel. So again, landscape photographers are going to appreciate that.
Okay, then you have the Z8 that would make the fourth camera in that sort of smaller body lineup, but slightly bigger physically.
Pro build, exactly. More function buttons, better build quality. So, tough as nails. Something that can be used in the studio for daily use.
Studio fine art photography camera.
Exactly, but I assume it will be picked up by wedding photographers as well. So, people publishing books, anything who need to print large will appreciate this. We don't really have a studio camera from Nikon right now.
Not in the Z lineup.
Not in the Z lineup. People can argue that the Z7 Mark II is the camera for that. I still don't believe that's the case because there is a need for the tougher, more robust build.
And then we lastly have the Z9, which is our go-to sports, action, wildlife, fast frames per second, and also sort of pro-level video by the to all intents and purposes. So we've got 5 full-frame Z cameras in that range.
Yes.
And then obviously you've got the 6.2s and the 7.2s as cheaper options, which they may eventually phase out.
Exactly.
It's a lot of cameras.
And if we are lucky, maybe they'll get a dedicated video camera, but it's a really long shot, I would say.
Yeah, I would say so too. Now, the apparent expert who likes to throw out wild rumors with no substantiated evidence behind it is Camera Insider on Twitter.
How to Fly.
How to Fly says no Z7 III or Z6 III this year, but Z8 will arrive in September, no later than October, and the pricing of Z8 is quite appealing, lower than expected. Now, I don't know who this person is.
No one knows, but apparently everyone is quoting him, and he has a rumor that there's going to be a new Tamron lens announced either this week or next week. So if that rumor comes through, maybe
he/she knows something that we don't know.
Exactly. So let's see how it goes. At this stage, I think it's incorrect. But that's just my kind of take on this. Maybe I'm wrong. But there's also a thing came out that someone found this page on the Nikon website and they look at the code, and apparently there's a photographer, which is Nikon ambassador Jerry Gionis, who we asked questions on Bahan's live stream, remember back in the day.
On biography, yeah.
Apparently they've listed that he took those shots with the Z8, and it's clearly a typo because it's it's a very old page. I think it's about a year old, etc., etc. So there are people really grasping for straws at this age just to get any information about Z8 out. I would say let's just wait and see. I know it's been slow. I mean, we haven't had a podcast for 2 weeks and there's no much news to cover really.
No.
But it's August. So I think it will pick up in September. Who knows what we're going to get.
All right. Next up, 4 Nikon products, including the Nikon Z9 mirrorless camera, were honored with EISA awards. Now that's the Expert Imaging and Sound Association. EISA, if you like it. The full frame FX format mirrorless camera Z9 won the EISA Camera of the Year 2022 to 23 award. And there were 3 Nikon lenses, which were also winners.
So that was that 400 2.8 VR, Z800 f6.3. So 400 was professional telephoto lens, 800 won telephoto lens, and then Micro 105 Z lens also won a macro lens award as well.
Whoop, whoop. I like that lens.
It is a nice lens. I think all Nikon Z lenses are quite fantastic. I think we really getting a banger after the banger, the hit after the hit. And in terms of this, unless you really start to look at very entry level, like 24 to 50 or something like this, the rest of the lenses are simply superb.
Absolutely. Very nice.
Yay!
Now on to an interesting topic. Nikon Z7 is listed as discontinued in Japan. Now this is the Mark I version of the camera, bearing in mind. It is listed under the old product section of the official Nikon Japan website. It's not listed in the discontinued section of the Nikon Japan website, which leads me to believe that they're not producing them anymore, but they haven't officially end-of-lifed them, as they call it.
Yeah, the whole thing with old product, it could be a Google translation, but we've seen in the past where a lot of lenses were listed as old products in Japan, but were still available for order to dealers in the United States and UK as well. In this case, however, in UK, it seems like we can't get Z7s anymore from Nikon, so all the SKUs have been discontinued. And we reported back in April that Nikon discontinued a bunch of SKUs of Z7 and Z6 products. Now, in terms of Z6, there's only one Z6 product currently available. It's Z6 kit with 2470. So no bodies available anymore, no grip options, etc., etc. So who knows? It seems like those cameras are being slowly phased out. And that gives me hope that the new products will be introduced very soon.
That's right, because it doesn't make a huge amount of sense to have 3 generations of the same camera available at one time. Now, interestingly enough, it was 4 years ago to the day that we were at the Z6, Z7 launch event. This was the press launch that we went to. It was at the Design Museum in Kensington in London. It was a fantastic event, and it was really just the highlight of the fact that it was an entirely new system with the new big mount, and it was all new news. Look where we've come in 4 years.
Absolutely. I mean, 4 years. So it's incredible. So the Z system has been out for 4 years. It's very interesting. And you know what? I can tell that in 4 years, we finally, I think, getting to the point where those cameras can now compete with DSLRs, and Z9 is answer to that. And I think then the next releases, in my opinion, are going to be full replacement. I know that you've been convinced a long time ago. For me, Z9 is the camera that now can compete with, let's say, with cameras like J50 as autofocus speed, etc., etc. So I think we're finally at this point where, really, if you're a DSLR user, you kind of need to start to prepare yourself for upgrading your system, really. I mean, unless, of course, you're not a professional photographer, and then you can use your camera for another 10 years. And I'm sure that, in terms of quality control, Nikon equipment will perform as long as it possibly can.
Keep using your D200, folks.
Yeah, don't shoot it at 800 ISO, though. All right, let's move on to other news. So the first benchmarks of the CFexpress Type B memory card released by Nikon, which is called MC-CF 660G, a very nice name, and I think I would prefer to call it just ZCFB or something like this, but who knows. So the couple of tests that came out, so the Chinese blogger published some tests on the Weibo, which is, I assume, is a Chinese version of Facebook,
right?
Social media website. So the highest read speed reported was 1700 megabytes per second, and the highest write is at 1500 megabytes per second, which is very, very close to advertising speeds. Now, the Nikon Rumor reader, his name is Van Raya, he also published his tests in the comments. And what did he say, Becky?
He said, I just received 2 of the Nikon CFexpress 600 gig cards today and tried an experiment in my Z9. One card in the slot, I selected 15 frames per second, framed an outdoor scene and held the shutter down. I started with the battery at 100%. About 15 minutes later, with the frame rate holding steady, I filled the card with 13,150 images. The battery was at 90% and the card was warm, but not hot. I was specifically curious about this as the pro-grade Cobalt cards run cooler than their Delkin competitor. With either 1 or 2 cards in the slot and the frame rate at 20 frames per second, I got about 80 shots before the buffer started to limit the frame rate. Now that's obviously writing to both cards at the same time.
And he also said that writing with both cards at the same time, he got 12 frames per second instead of 15. And another user replied, well, saying, yes, it's not surprising because obviously you recording 2 cards simultaneously. So the what they call the storage bus, which is basically running at full capacity at this stage, the amount of data is being recorded. This is huge.
Yeah.
So therefore, this is a very logical explanation of reduction of those rates. So in terms of this, yes, if you do want to maintain the highest rate possible, you do need to record to 1 card effectively.
There you go.
All right, Nikon had a Q1 financial results published a couple of weeks ago. So we covered it in the previous podcast, so you can have a look at that if you want to. Now, we always wait for Q&A session. So, in terms of they finally published this. So what did they ask, Becky?
Okay, so question 1 was, you said that you revised upward your full year operating profit forecast by about 5 billion yen.
5 billion.
That's right, which is the amount by which Q1 results beat your internal plan. Please share the reasons for beating the plan.
All right, what they say is about half of their outperformance was driven by a higher average sales price, including reduced sales promotions, spending, and product mix improvement. So first of all, the margin went up. Yeah, so higher priced products sold. Effectively Z9. That's what tells me.
Right.
Now, we also actually have now official confirmation that they're reducing the amount of promotions they're going to have throughout the year. And it's not just Nikon who does this. I've noticed that happened with Canon and Fuji as well.
Right.
So it seems like that we're not going to get promos every 3 months anymore. And that's to do, I guess, with the availability of the stock. If you don't have products to sell, there's no point of running promotion because it sells itself. So, that answers this.
Yes. Now, the other question that we've extracted from this Q&A is, why did you leave your forecasts unchanged for Q2 and beyond? And what was their answer to that?
Global economy.
Oh,
An exchange rate. Ooh. That's some of the things. But also, what they say is that actually they're going to compete with other manufacturers and release the products that will compete with the products of other manufacturers. So that's the answer. So, again, they put it in the imaging business section. I don't really see too much of them telling what's going to come out, etc. But what it tells me that they will release a competitive product. So that hopefully is good news. I mean, we can hope that those products will be competitive, because if they're not, just pack our bags and leave, really, no?
Yeah, exactly. If they're not competitive, then why are we here?
Hello and welcome to Sony Report, your weekly round of all the latest Sony news.
It's really bizarre. I mean, it's sort of stating the obvious. They certainly have, I would say, revealed more in previous financial Q&As than this one. Usually they say, well, look, we're expanding the lineup and that's how we're going to achieve these figures, because we're going to do, 33 lenses and this, that, and anything. They haven't done any of that. They haven't said anything. So we can live in hope.
I can actually work at Nikon Core because I can say we're going to release more cameras and going to be really competitive. I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. I can also predict they'll release more cameras this year, next year.
Yes.
And also next year they'll release some lenses as well.
They really ought to employ you. They're missing out on
Yeah,
a
and they will be
spokesperson.
competitive. And you know what? In 2025, you're going to see more cameras to come from Nikon.
Wow.
Yeah.
My mind is blown.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to third-party news. We have some updates, and those are firmware updates for some Fotodiox adapters that will allow you to put some third-party lenses like my Mi 7 lens. I've got one.
You do.
And then also Canon lenses and Leica lenses.
Can they do a Pentax 6.7 one?
I think there is one available. Yeah, you should really have a look at it. They're not cheap. They're about $300, but you can get that beautiful 105 Takumar image quality on your Z camera. So who knows? So this firmware basically updates your adapter to work with Z9 and firmware version 2.0, which Nikon released quite some time ago.
Yeah, it took them a while.
Exactly, but that's the problem with all the third-party adapters. You have to reverse engineer pretty much everything, not just autofocus,
That's right.
but just basic, whatever signals the lens sends in, etc., etc. So just adapter to tell the camera that it's an adapter.
Yeah.
So, but those of you who have those adapters, and Fotodiox, if you're watching this, give us a call.
We have lenses that we
have
can
lenses to
we can
test.
try it
Exactly,
on.
exactly. We can do that and spread the word. So, but if you got one of those, do definitely download those firmware. Those are free. Now let's move on to some third-party lenses.
Yeah, so Yongnuo soon to announce the YN 16mm f1.8 SDA DSM lens for the Nikon Z and Sony E mounts. These are leaked specs from the Photo Rumours website. So obviously this is a rumor, nothing more. Apparently it's going to be made out of metal with a lightweight and compact design, weighing only 310 grams, with a minimum focusing distance of 17 centimeters, and it's going to be a weather-resistant design. There's not much else said about it there.
That's true. I mean, the good news about Yongnuo lenses, they're not very expensive, so that's good news. They won't compete with Nikon lenses, but then if you don't have a 16mm out from Nikon, then there's no competition. Now, I'm worried because of the size of the lens that it may be a DX lens, but there's no indication if it's going to be full frame or not.
I don't know what those abbreviations mean, to be honest. DA might...
Duh.
It's a DA lens. It may be that it is their version of DX. And
yeah, it's a typo like a Z8 instead of Z9.
Well, they don't call it DX. Nikon.
Well, you never know, but very, very interesting, fingers crossed. So the announcement is imminent, so stay tuned for the news. Now, company AstrHori, which is a Chinese manufacturer, also released 85mm f2.8 tilt lens for that mount, and it's obviously a manual focus lens.
Yes.
It's tilt, it's not a shift lens, so just tilt. You get one. Maybe they should release a second lens which just shift, and then you can have both and you can decide what you need.
Okay.
It is a full frame lens, though, which is good. We don't really have either tilt or shift lenses for Nikon Z mount yet, so fingers crossed, hopefully Nikon will follow as well. It's going to be priced at €399, so no price in US and UK pounds yet. So UK pounds, I like that.
UK pounds.
UK pounds.
Great British pounds. Although I have to say, it's not €399 is very, very similar now. So
yeah,
it's all about the same.
Exactly. And with the exchange rate of $1 as well, it's probably $399 as well. So that's good news. Now, the next news is something that I personally really excited about.
Okay.
It's the company's JJC, which is a Chinese manufacturer, maybe Japanese manufacturer, who knows. So, they normally manufacture those LCD tempered glass covers and all the little accessories for your cameras. The good news is they are fairly inexpensive. And I normally buy those, I have on my Z6, I have a little tempered glass cover on the screen there.
You're good
and it was
that.
really, really nice. So they are actually releasing a large eyecup for Nikon Z9. Now, to my knowledge, Nikon doesn't have an eyecup for Z9.
No.
And it's finally for people who wear glasses, for people who want to block off the light. This is the only solution in the market. So, that's pretty good. It's available at 3,900 yen, which is not very expensive. And I assume it will make its way to United States and UK for some of us who appreciate those rubber eye cups.
Yeah, you can usually buy them on places like Amazon. You can buy them from Jeff. Right.
You can buy it from Jeff.
You can buy it from Jeff. Speaking of eye cups, ThinkTank have now produced a Z9 compatible eyepiece for their hydrophobia rain covers. So if you own one of the rain covers already and then you've bought a Z9 and don't have a fitting eyepiece, they now have the eyepiece available. Those should be coming into stock within the next couple of months. There is obviously an eyepiece for the Z6, Z7 series, also fits the Z5, etc. And then they've got their one for all the round eyepieces on DSLRs and all the rectangular eyepieces on DSLRs. So we now have eyepieces for everything.
That's really, really good. And now let's talk about Nikon DF. Let's give it some love.
Yay.
The company called KAZA, or KAZA?
Yeah.
They are manufacturers of really nice grips for the Nikon DSLRs and also cases. So this time, they introduced 2 additional colors to the Italian leather case that they have for Nikon DF. So
nice.
Now it's available in black and also olive green, I assume. No, vintage green. So
vintage green. It's not olive. It's very, that doesn't look green. I mean, it does kind of
muted.
It's like a brown green. It's more brown than green.
But it's not a Scheisse brown, though.
No. Vintage green, which is kind of a dark brown, but is very, very pleasing on the eye.
And you know what? I don't really like half cases on my cameras, but I can say that this case, actually, if you have a Nikon ZF, it looks pretty good. So it's kind of, maybe I would consider it, but generally I don't do this. Do you actually use cases on your cameras?
Actually, I haven't for a while. I used to. I don't at the moment, but I've got too many other bits and pieces going on.
That's true. That's true. I assume if, we now have camera bags and, it's all padded, or we have camera inserts that would go to a normal bag, so to keep those things protected. So,
yeah, by the time you put on an L plate and one thing and another, it's not very convenient to have a half case on there.
Exactly. Okay, well, That's it. So price at 13,200 yen, which is 82 pounds, which is very interesting. So you can order it directly from Japan.
Next up, after a year of absence, Nico van Dijk's Nikon website is back online. Don't know if there was a reason given as to why it was offline, but it is really a sort of encyclopedia of all things vintage Nikon. If you would like to have a look, we'll include a link in the description box and in the podcast notes for you. There are all kinds of things, places where you can get your Nikon serviced or repaired, various different models of the Nikon cameras and serial numbers going throughout the years. I think at one point, we're using them to find serial numbers of older cameras. All the different bits and pieces, accessories, various different articles, history of Nikon Court, you name it, it's on there. So
it's almost like encyclopedia of Nikon.
Yeah, go ahead and have a look.
Fantastic. Let's move on to some events that's going to happen this year. So Adobe MAX, the Creativity Conference, is back as a virtual event this year. So that is scheduled on 18th and 19th of October this year. You can register for free. We include the link below under this video. So obviously they normally announce a bunch of stuff for their Adobe suites, so for Premiere, Photoshop, Lightroom, etc., etc. So very interesting to see. I'm going to say this every single time now.
Very interesting.
So if you're an Adobe head, then you can definitely join the conference. Now, let's talk about other conference that is not going to happen this year. So Create NYC, as in Create New York, formerly PhotoPlus, has been postponed until 2023. So in the press release, they say that the first show needs a little extra time to produce a collective and inspiring experience imagined for this dynamic space. Don't know what that means, but it is postponed to next year. Here you have it, folks. If you ever visited, then tell us how it was before and what you think is going to happen in the future.
Yes. And don't forget, we have the photography show up in Birmingham.
Birmingham.
Between the 17th and the 20th of September. We're hoping to be there one of the days to have a mooch around and shoot some video of us mooching around. So if you haven't already booked your tickets for that and you are wanting to go, make sure you do that, because I think it's going to be even bigger than last year.
That's true. Maybe we're going to see Z8, just like we hoped to see Z9 last year.
That's right, actually. We went around asking them where the Z9 was.
So now it's going, where's Z8? Where's Z8? Where's Z8?
We have to do a repeat, a little callback to last year's experience.
Exactly. Wink if it's good, if it exists.
Yeah, exactly. Blink if it's under the desk.
Exactly.
So that should be fun. Shall we move on to some reviews?
Yeah, so we have one review for you, and it's a video review by the chap called Jeff Cooper. Now, he reviews Z400mm f4.5 VR lens with a TC 1.4 teleconverter, and he compares it to 500 f-mount f5.6 VR lens and also 400 f2.8 G VR. So what does he say, Becky?
He says that in summary, the new lens is amazing. It autofocuses faster than either of his f-mount lenses, approximately 15% faster than the 500pf on the Z9 in his test, and still slightly faster even with the 1.4 converter. The new lens seems to have a very slight edge in VR performance, and I could get slightly more sharper images all the way down to 25th of a second and even a 5th of a second. So that's pretty impressive, handheld.
He has pretty steady hand, I tell you that.
Don't shoot that slow. In image quality tests, moving the camera to have the same field of view, my new Z400 4.5 is slightly sharper and more contrasty than the 500pf. And overall, it sounds like it's a really nice combination. So worth checking out.
Absolutely. Let's move on so we can read and watch. So first one up, we have a couple of videos that you may have missed. So first one is called Why We Love the Nikon FM3A Film Camera by us.
Yes. Someone complained about the lack of continuity because I was wearing a different t-shirt at some point. Whereas I wear different clothes every time I go out. You were wearing the same jumper in both shoots. Sorry.
I just have 20 of them. I'm just like Steve Jobs.
It was like same cap, same jacket, and then I was wearing a different shirt in each one.
The little you know, we recorded this video over years. So it's been about 10 years we're recording this video. So, you know.
It certainly was a few months anyway, so you have to bear with us. But please feel free to watch it and keep an eye out, see when I change shirt in the middle of the video. Needless to say, we don't have a continuity director or supervisor.
Absolutely. The comments like this keep us going. Now, we also had 24:2 zoom comparison. So 6 lenses compared side by side, vignetting, the center sharpness, etc., the most boring video we did, I think.
Certainly from a recording experience, it was not the most fun. However, it might be useful for some of you who are looking for a real, just basic comparison between the 6 lenses that shoot in that same range, particularly if you're thinking, do I need to really front for a 24-70 2.8 or can I get away with a 24-120 f4?
Yeah.
I picked those two because we beg to differ on
Honestly,
it.
if we didn't cut it to the length we cut it, probably would be about 30-40 minutes
I
long.
think the original cut was about 45 minutes, yeah.
Oh dear. Okay, so we release an extended cut. It's like a Becky Schneider's extended cut.
I think it will be just too painful for people to watch, but it is interesting. So please do go and check that out if you can. We also did our live stream on Friday, which was celebrating World Photography Day. So check that out if you have a chance.
Personally, I like Pancake Day more.
Pancake Day more than World Photography Day. I think we did really well on World Photography Day. It was an interesting one. Next up, we have Matt Irwin's 24-120 f4S Z lens review, a must-have all-rounder over 6 months later. That's video and stills samples that he includes there. So have a look on Matt's channel if you can.
Yeah, the 24-120 lens gets us such a good rep from the users. Even looking at the comments under our 24-something video, you know, people say the 24-120 is really the way to go, and I absolutely agree. It's the first 24-120 that I personally think is on par with other 24-120 lens, because the G version, let's be honest.
I'm saying nothing. I don't know what you have against that lens. I do know what you have against that lens. You've told me many times, but I agree. The Z version is a very, very good contender.
Let me tell you what I have against it. So image quality, autofocus performance, vignetting, and overall softness at all focal distances.
Before people start throwing things at you at the screen, shall we move on?
And the last audio we have for you, not a video one, but it's a podcast recommendation. The Let's Rental podcast, we've recommended this before. It talks about how to test your gear at home, how to test your lenses, how to test your cameras, how to do a test properly, why some home tests that you can do are completely wrong, why you shouldn't go on the forums and say what to do and why to do this, etc., etc. So very technical. But for some of you who watched our 24-something video, you would really, really enjoy that. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much for watching and or listening. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're on YouTube. Please, please, please do give this channel a like and a subscribe. It is hugely helpful. It costs nothing. And believe it or not, we have 14,500 subscribers. We've had nearly 3 million views. That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of views. And you know, they're sharing. It is caring.
Yes.
We're also available on all good podcast platforms. So if you want to listen to us in high fidelity, we're available there as a beautifully cut 320 kilobits per second podcast.
Very nice. If you'd like to find us on the internet, then you can find us on Instagram. The shop is at Nikon @Grays. I am at Rebecca_Danese.
And I'm at Konstantin Kochkin. We will see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Look, this guy bought the ZFC based on my review. Look at that.